Zak Nilsson, welcome back to the Chad Sylvia Show. And Kiefo Nilsson, welcome to the Chad Sylvia Show for the first time.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Now, this is quite an honor. I have two of Harry Nilsson's sons. Zak, we've talked before. You know that I am a huge fan of your father's music. And we scheduled an interview because we wanted to talk about Harry's upcoming album, which is actually the very last thing he recorded, and now it's being turned into a full-fledged album. Kiefo, you are, I guess, his second to last child. Is that right?
Yeah, second youngest.
Second youngest. And you actually play bass on this album.
Yeah, I do. On six tracks out of, was there 11 tracks, I think, or 10 tracks?
That must be very surreal, and I want to talk more about your involvement in the album. But before we get to that, between the two of you, two of Harry Nilsson's sons, who knows a whole heck of a lot more about the background of this album than I do, can you please tell us about basically the story, where this album began, and how did it get started?
Well, I was in the summer of 1993. I was in LA. I wasn't living in LA at the time, but I was visiting LA, and I was visiting Harry and the kids. And one day while I was visiting, Harry said, "Come on, let's go for a ride." He came and picked me up. And then in the car, he put in a tape and he played me all these demos. And this was way back in 93. So I heard the rough demo versions of a bunch of the songs that are on this album, including Woman Oh Woman and UCLA and Animal Farm and Try and Dodger Blue. And I didn't know what was going to happen with that because he ended up dying before everything is finished. He finished the demos, but the songs weren't finished. And then they just stayed the way they were for a couple decades until just recently.
Now, what got the ball rolling to complete the album?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what specifically might have changed between now and then, but I do know it's something that the family, like, we've always wanted it to be released, and I think it's just finding the right avenue to make it happen and to make sure it happens in a good way. Or, figuring out, like, well, who specifically do we need to talk to, or who do we need to, work with? And I don't know exactly why 2019 and 2018 was the, when we was like, okay, now it's going to happen. But I do know that it was kickstarted a little bit by Brad Rosenberger over at Omnivore Recordings, and Mark Hudson, of course, who had worked on some of these original recordings back in the 90s with my dad. So they got involved early on, and they just hashed it out, and they said, okay, let's go ahead and let's just do this. And Mark was definitely really motivated because he had what he considered essentially unfinished business. He recorded this stuff so long ago, and he wanted it to be what he hoped it could have been back then, or at least as close as it could be. And that's kind of what I know about the early goings.
Now, there's this story I read about Mark Hudson and your father, Harry Nilsson, going to a record company, I believe, to sell the album. Mark Hudson told your father, let me take care of this or whatever. And they went in there, and it was, it was the early 90s, and music had kind of changed a little bit, and the record company was kind of, not sure about it. And I believe the story went that your father got really upset, and I think they stormed out. What about Mark Hudson's involvement in the actual producing of the album? Because obviously you played bass on it, Kiefo. What was it like working with Mark?
Well, he definitely had what you'd say he had a vision. He had an idea of where he wanted these things to arrive at. And he's someone who's been in the industry for a very long time, and he has worked with a lot of people, and he's worked in a lot of different studios. So, as you said, like, the industry has changed a lot, but when you're in a studio, a lot of things are still the same, and you still try to shape something the way that you have some idea of where it would be, where you want it to be, that is. So working with him was basically just trying to get to that place and figure out what we're trying to do with these songs that we can add to them in a way that makes them feel exciting and complete, but also not take away at all from the vocals that are already there, not take away from the songwriting, not distract from anything, because the main event is that it's Harry Nilsson record, and we're just trying to support that as best as we can.
Who all played on the album? You played bass. Who else played on the album?
But it was Jim Keltner played drums, and this guy named Jim Cox did a lot of the arranging, and a guy named, what was his name? Z. I forgot the guitarist's name, something Z. But anyway, I didn't meet all the musicians because it was done in different sessions, but it was the primary stuff that I worked on was with Jim Keltner, and me and Jim Cox were in the studio together.
Now, I know the demos of this album, or the demo, has been out for a while, and a lot of fans had, I think through the internet, had their hands on it, and I've seen that a lot of the fans have been really become comfortable and really like the original demos. Now, Zach and Kiefo both, you've obviously, heard the new album complete. How does it compare to the demos? And for fans who are really used to the demos, do you think they're going to love it now that it's all been spruced up?
Oh yeah, because this is not the demos. These songs have, for the most part, have been completely rebuilt from the ground up based on the demos. So they're full-fledged studio recorded songs now, and they're really good. I mean, they sound really, really good. Because the demos were rough. Like when Harry played them for me initially, they were pretty rough. I mean, I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, the songwriting was there and the singing was there. And all we did with these is use Harry's vocals and then rebuild the song around them. And they sound really good now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Some of the tracks were a little bit more complete than others, but a lot of them really were just demos. They were just demonstrations of an idea. And I think as a musician, there is something that can happen sometimes with demos, like you're saying. Sometimes people hear something and they really like the potential of what it is, and they think, oh, it's rough, but I really love the potential of what it could be. And that's sort of what they might fall in love with a little bit, even though it might be rough, it might not be a complete idea. And we're just trying to make it exciting, make it fun, make it something that you can really just put on and enjoy, and not have to do that extra legwork of, what could have been. And I think it accomplishes that goal. I think it's a lot of really good music, really great songs. I mean, the songwriting really does shine through, and we just tried to do our best to support it.
Well, Harry was an amazing songwriter, just amazing. And I'm the type of person who likes to go in fresh to something. So like if somebody goes and sees a movie, they don't tell me about it. I don't want to hear about it before I see it. I want to go in fresh. And with music, I'm the same way. So when I saw this Lost and Found album by Harry was coming out, I was really excited, but I didn't want to hear anything about it. I didn't want to listen to it. I was like, I want to wait till the full album comes out, and I just want to hear it fresh and go in. Well, last night I had to. I'm like, okay, I've got to listen. I got to listen to some of this. So I heard the song Lost and Found, and I had previously, I guess, kind of heard UCLA, and I really liked both of them. But last night was kind of like, the turning point. It got my juices flowing. After listening to Lost and Found, I'm like, this is an album. This is like a Harry album that Harry fans have been waiting for, and it's unbelievable like something like this is available. So I am just so excited to hear the whole album, because what I've heard so far, it is awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Sweet. Glad you enjoyed it.
As far as the release date goes, when's it coming out?
It's coming out November 22nd.
In what format? Obviously, I assume download CD. Is it going to be available on vinyl as well?
Yeah, I believe it is. I'm not sure. I mean, I know it is. I just don't know if the vinyl is going to be a limited release or not. But it is going to be available on vinyl. Well,
here's the big question. Obviously, you're his two sons, and you knew your dad, and you knew probably, his likes, his dislikes to a certain extent. But the fact of the matter is would Harry give thumbs up to what has been finally produced with this album?
Oh, I believe so. I believe absolutely. Yeah. Because he did the rough demos, and he knew they were just rough demos. I think if he heard the way they sound now, after they've been, redone and produced and recorded, I think he would be really happy with them.
Yeah, I'd like to think so too. I mean, I think one of the things I've learned from talking to some of the musicians who worked with him was that he very much liked in his process to be the songwriter, but he always trusted the musicians to flesh out the songs throughout his whole career. And he would work with them, of course, but he gave a lot of trust to the musicians he worked with. So I would like to think that he would, he would hear what musicians had to add to his new material and be excited about that. And then I would think that the fact that I got to play on it too would be pretty cool too. I'd like to think he would have wanted me to do that anyway, even if he was around. So.
Oh, no, yeah, for sure. He would have loved that. Plus, Jim Keltner. I mean, in addition to being a world-class drummer, they were good friends. So he would have been happy about that too.
Yeah, and I just got to reiterate, because Jim Keltner was just a total pro. He was a joy to work with. Absolutely everything you would expect from a world-class drummer of his stature.
Yeah, the drums are so good on these tracks.
Well, the production from Lost and Found, the title track that I listened to last night, the production was great. And, his voice sounded great. Now, I know a lot of people, with Zach, last time we were on the show, we talked about, Harry's voice getting injured during the production of Pussycats. But I said to you then, Zach, that, the vocals on that album were just hauntingly beautiful. And I know damage was done, but I tell you what, there was something hauntingly beautiful about his voice even after that injury. And it really comes through even on his last album when I know he wasn't well.
Yeah, and I've been listening to all the tracks on the album recently. And, man, I mean, you can tell that his voice was damaged. You can tell that he was sick. He had heart disease. But, man, you just can't. He's still one of the world's greatest singers. And you can't get around that, no matter how sick he was or how, damaged his vocal cords were. You can still hear it. His voice is still accurate. It still sounds really nice. And I was always impressed by that. I mean, he just had an incredible voice that never quit.
Yeah, and he also really, I think, especially after the Pussycat sessions, that was a moment of truth for him with his voice, where he had to really sit down and think, how am I going to use this moving forward? And you can track through the mid-70s, late 70s, as his voice gets better and different. It changes a bit, but it still, it heals and changes, and he finds a new comfortable spot of where he can, because it doesn't have the same sort of a quality that it had in the early years, but it could never. So instead he adapts to that and finds a real comfort zone. And I think that's really accurate to what Zach is saying. Just he really cared about it, and he really was trying to do the best he could, because that's what he did. That was his life. He was singing. So,
well, the bottom line is the proof's in the pudding. And when I listened to Lost and Found, I got that feeling. Like every time I've ever listened to Harry's music for the first time, I just get this specific feeling that Harry's music brings. And it was no different when I listened to the title track off this upcoming album, his last album he ever recorded. So to me, there's the proof right there. His instrument, even though it changed over the years, was never less effective, was never less beautiful, and never less moving. It stayed the same.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really good. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and I think this album is really going to cater to Nilsson fans, simply because when you listen to this album, you can hear it. It's like, this is Harry Nilsson. This is the Harry Nilsson I remember. It's his songwriting. It's his voice, backed up by a professional studio band. It's pretty much everything you want from a Nilsson album.
Well, I want to talk real quick as well about what you guys are up to. Kiefo, we just talked about how you played bass on the album, which is exciting. But do you have any other music projects, or are you in a band? Because obviously you have a lot of music talent.
Well, thank you. I do play in a band around Los Angeles called Brother Sister. It's a difficult band to Google, but you can type brothersisterrocks.com is our website. And we try to play, it's a ground floor type of a band, but it's really, I love it. It's really great. It's just like really interesting music to play. It's rock music, kind of progressive pop, almost in the style of like Queen or ELO or something like that. And there's 7 people in the band. It's just a lot of fun. So that's a band that I play in. But besides for that, I have actually put together a couple of live performances of Nilsson music, of which Zach has participated in a couple of those. If Zach wants to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, those are great. Keith has put together a bunch of live performances of The Point. it's all the music from The Point, accompanied with a slideshow and narration. And I was the narrator a couple times, and those were amazing shows because there's a full live band playing all of the music from The Point, which is just spectacular because that's, in my opinion, one of Harry's best albums. It's The Point with all the music. And just to hear that live was so rewarding and so spectacular. And Kiefo and the band did such a good job with that. And I was just super stoked to be a part of it, and also just super stoked that it was happening at all. So that was really good.
Well, The Point is one of my favorite albums. I love The Point. Now, you guys do this around the Los Angeles area. Do you guys ever take the show on the road further, out places?
I did a show in San Francisco, but that's as far as I've taken it. Otherwise, it's been around Southern California. Because each show is kind of its own little event. You know, it's not at this stage, I would say, it's not really there's 15 musicians, so it's a lot of, moving parts, and we try to treat each one like its own special event.
Now, Kiefo, I went on YouTube and I to your YouTube channel, and I found it very interesting. You do a lot of recordings of performances, just in kind of like casual ways of some of your father's music, and it's really good. How often do you post music on your YouTube channel? Because I thought it was really cool.
I haven't really been. I think the last time I posted was at least not in a while. I don't really do that much of it. That was I don't know, several years ago. I was sitting around one day and I just kind of thought, I was playing around with that song "Open Your Window." And I'm not a guitar player hardly at all, but I was like kind of figuring out those chords, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of fun. And I just figured, I didn't have a YouTube page at that time, so I thought it'd be kind of cool to just go ahead and set something up, microphone and all. But then it kind of just started to do some more of them, but I don't really post on YouTube very actively anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I just have the two things I would post there were Harry Nilsson stuff, and then just like bass performance stuff, like Jocko stuff or whatever. But
well, I thought it was really cool, so I encourage people to check out your YouTube channel. Even though you haven't posted recently, there's a bunch of stuff on there that I think they'll find really interesting. Now, Zak, how is your Canceroki going?
Oh, that's fun. I just do that to screw around. It's fine. I have a few more queued up, and I just do it every once in a while just because it's fun for me. It helps me, like singing Canceroki, the karaoke it helps my lungs work a little bit and gets me active a little bit. So for me, it's actually good health wise. Other than that, it's just fun.
Man, you got a lot of fans. You gotta keep the fans happy too.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of your fans, can you give all the fans of you and all the people who are wishing you well an update on your health, Zak?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm still undergoing chemotherapy. I'm on a new regimen now. That seems to be working pretty well, but we won't know for at least another month or so. Other than that, I'm still trucking along. It's fine. I get chemotherapy and it makes me sick for a few days, but I mean, it's all good.
Well, you're such a positive, upbeat person, man, and that's awesome. It's inspirational. One last question for the both of you. I'm going to ask you both the same question, and just please take your time to answer any way you want. But my question to the both of you is...
It's not who did you vote for, is it?
No, I'm trying to block out election stuff and politics. The question is, what is your fondest memory of your father?
That's a good question. I have a lot of memories, not as many as Kiefo probably, but I have a lot of good ones. We took a trip once up to Washington State. It was just me and him, and that's a good memory because we had a lot of time together. Another good one is maybe my favorite one is when we went to London. He recorded the title song or the credit song for The Fisher King, the movie, called "How About You." I like New York in June. How about you? And I got to be there in the studio with him when he recorded that. And that for me was really special. Plus, we spent about a week and a half together, just the two of us. And we had some good conversations. That's a good memory for me.
Yeah, I don't know. That is a hard question for me to answer because I was pretty young when he passed away. So when I think about my memories of that time, there's a blurring effect of where I don't always know how much of it is a real memory and how much of it is sort of a augmented memory that how time can do that. But I do have one strong memory that I think about as one of my earliest memories as well, just in general, of being at our house, and I was playing in the living room, and we had this big glass door that went off to a hillside, like just an open, hillside with a lot of brush and whatever. And the lights were on inside, the lights were off outside, and I was playing right by the glass, and a gigantic, the largest in the entire world, coyote came right up to the glass door. And I was like terrified, and I ran away to my parents' bedroom, and they comforted me. And that's a memory that stuck with me just as a child, that, it's not specifically of my dad per se, but he was there. And it's a very potent memory that I always hold on to.
Well, the comfort that we receive from our parents and those memories, those warm feelings, are very special. But I think that, really good music, like your father's, like Harry Nilsson's music, also creates a comfort and a warm feeling within people who listen to it. And I'm one of those people who have always been really drawn to your father's work. It's really helped me through a lot of hard times, and I just really appreciate and really love it. And I think it's awesome that, you guys and whoever else is involved, Mark Hudson, whoever it was, that you guys have put together this album, his last recordings, Lost and Found, and I can't wait to get it on November 22nd, correct?
Yeah, November 22nd, Omnivore Recordings.
So, and it's available on Amazon, any other specific places all over? Where's the main place to get it?
Well, yeah, Omnivore, you can actually get it from Omnivore Recordings directly on their website. You can pre-order it now, and but yeah, it'll be on streaming, and it'll be wherever music is sold, I hope.
Well, I can't wait to get it. I know so many other people can't either. It's wonderful what I've heard so far. Zak Nilsson, Kiefo Nilsson, thank you so much for coming on my show, and I look forward to talking to you guys again in the future.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having us.